A very good evening to you. And welcome along to another Sweet and Swing here on Manx Radio. My name's Howard Kane, a delight as ever to have your company. What have we got? How about a bit of Hamp? Yeah, Lionel Hampton. Something from the Great British Experience. Might dip in and out of that a bit. Some Jimmy Rushing. I haven't even opened that one. George Shearing. And to get us going, well, all I can say is, you are my lucky star. Good ending. Sudden, but to the point. You are my lucky star. Well, you are. I mean, if you weren't there, I'd be just talking to myself. So, whilst I do that quite frequently, it's very nice to actually know you are out there listening. How are we all? How are you? Surviving as we head into autumn and then winter? Where does it go? It's very true what your parents say, isn't it, when you're young, which you never believe, of course. Things like your school days are your best days of your life, and you think, no, they're not. You go to school, and then afterwards you think, oh, I don't know, were they? Perhaps I didn't have quite as much responsibility as I thought. And also, yes, time goes faster as you get older. Make the most of your childhood and the rest of it. Yeah. You just want to be grown up, be 18 and go and do the adult things. And then you do them and you think, well, they're all right, but not really as good as they're made out. And before you know it, it's true. The years are going past, and I was talking to someone yesterday who said, what's happened to 2025? And I know exactly what they mean. One moment we were starting, and these days it's a case of, oh, it's January. Oh, January and February have nothing to actually nothing to really put them on the map in my book, I don't think. And after that, well, you're into spring, which is always lovely, and then it's summer, and then on the Isle of Man you have the TT, and maybe you go away for a summer holiday or something, and you get a bit of sunny weather, and maybe you're on the beach, and then before you know it, it's Grand Prix, and then suddenly we're into autumn, and here we are already. Yes, Hoptune, or Halloween, as some people call it, apparently. Equally, some people apparently use pumpkins rather than turnips, but I digress. And then, yes, it'll soon be Christmas, and then we start all over again. No wonder that Sweet and Swing seems to be, on the one hand, far away, on the other hand, for some people, I dare say, the blink of an eye. You Are My Lucky Star, in any case. Ambrose with, who was it? Jack Cooper taking the vocals. Briefly replaced Sam Brown with Ambrose during the mid-30s. That is, until Sam returned after touring with Elsie Carlisle and the Rhythm Sisters. His Christian name wasn't Jack, it was actually Bert. Short for Herbert. But because the Ambrose band already had Bert himself, of course, wielding the baton, you can't have two Berts in the band, can you? Plus, there was another Bert, Bert Barnes, on the piano. Could have been the Three Berts and co. He was quickly renamed Jack instead of Bert. He'd started out with Tommy Kinsman, another name disappeared into the annals, isn't it, in 1933, and went on to sing with Jack Hilton at the Dorchester, Louis Levy and Fred Hartley, and also recorded with Joe Loss, Prima Scala and Jay Wilbur. He was renowned, unusually perhaps, so I don't know, I'm saying unusually, as a bit of a loner. You always think these vocalists would have been, in the limelight and enjoy being in the limelight and out revelling with lots of fans and such like. Not necessarily. And later on, he quit singing and showbiz and became an electronic engineer, and then married quite late in life. But again, sadly, looking in the Book of Words, he died very reclusive, on his own, a widower, in a central London flat. Perhaps his lucky star didn't shine as brightly for him as it did for others. from a CD entitled Black Jazz in Europe. See, someone has copied that, I think. Breathe not a word of it abroad. For the old maestro back in the day, it must have been something he was after, and one of his jazz colleagues said, hey, I'll do you a copy. Complete with the notes they've printed off as well. They've gone to a great trouble to do it, whoever it was. Possibly Brian Westwell, our erstwhile bass player. Great bass player he was as well. I haven't seen Brian for ages. Don't know if he's still knocking around. Hello to you, Brian, if you are. Sincerely hope so. Haven't seen you for ages. Anyway, Sam Wooding and his orchestra. And, well, some references. I don't know whether you get away with some of them now. Not PC per se. And certainly going back in the time when black musicians were heavily ostracised in Europe and throughout the States, sometimes couldn't get work or just didn't get recorded and that sort of thing. Equally, I think, in the song, I do like it. Sounds quite modern in a way, but yeah, come on, woman, what are you grumbling about? You got everything. Yeah, well, I think it's of its time, as they say. 1925 being the time. In the summer of 25, it says in part of the liner notes, just a few months prior to the arrival of the Revue Negre in Paris, Sam Wooding had toured Germany with an orchestra that included the trumpeter Tommy Ladnier, marvellous trumpeter, and saxophonist Gene Cedric. The review in which they were taking part may not have been up to its later Paris equivalent, but at least the orchestra didn't suffer the indignity of being overlooked by the record companies. Berlin, July 1925, Sam Wooding invited into the studios by the firm Vox and cut his first disc. And in 1926, the orchestra embarked on a tour of the young Soviet Union, meaning that the two New Orleans personalities, Tommy Ladnier and Sidney Bechet, at last got round to meeting for the first time. And there's a good Trivial Pursuit question. Where did Sidney Bechet and Tommy Ladnier meet for the first time? In Moscow. Couldn't make that up, could you? Wonderful. Just the idea of the band touring Moscow in the 1920s seems rather wonderful stuff. Here's George Shearing, also around about the 1930s or early 40s, with a great lineup in this collection. September in the Rain. A little bit late for this. But there again, I didn't know what time it was.
a dream reverie. In the blue of evening, while crickets call and stars are falling, beneath the starlit sky, you'll come to me. In the shadows of the night we'll stand, I'll touch your hand, and then softly as your darling eyes entreat, our lips will meet again. In the blue of evening, night winds above whispering, I love you. There we will find romance in the blue of evening.
Well, I hope you're not too blue of an evening. Lovely song though, isn't it? In the blue of evening. Geraldo and his orchestra. Dorothy Carlos taking the vocals on that one. A great rounded voice, perfect for that song, it has to be said. Initially started out as a pianist and then became very popular pre-war, singing and broadcasting and recording with quite a few bands, including Ray Noble. And then, just as war was breaking out, she married Eugene Pini and honeymooned in France. And then the war started. Not a great way to start your married life, realistically, but life's life, isn't it? I suppose that must have happened to quite a few people, not just Dorothy Carlos. She made quite a few wartime records, more than 50 with Geraldo, would you believe? And then went to tour with Enza. And then didn't actually stay married for that long to Eugene Pini. She did remarry and emigrated to the States, but did return briefly to these shores during the 1950s. And her sister, fairly well known as well, Carol Carr. Remember Carol Carr, the singer. Before that, well, of course, the great George Shearing with that classic sound he had with the quintet. Not the absolute, I think it was the precursor of the one in the 50s with Marjorie Hyams on vibes. Great sound too. Chuck Wayne guitar, John Levy bass, and Denzel Best at the drums. I didn't know what time it was. That was back end of the 1940s, 1949. It is Sweet and Swing here on Max Radio. My name's Howard Kane. Always a pleasure, as I say, to have your company on a Friday night. We alternate with our sister programme, Jumping In, the best in modern and contemporary jazz. Different ends of the spectrum, but I promise you, good music in both. It just depends, well, on your taste and how Catholic it is. I encourage you to do both. I was brought up on the modern stuff and have gone backwards, and perhaps you were brought up on the older stuff and can try going forwards. Like all music, not everything's going to appeal to you, but hopefully something will somewhere. Dip a toe in, see next week what you think. I think we're doing a 1975, which sounds positively modern for this show next week. A 1975 special on Jumping In. Here on Sweet and Swing, we're going to turn to the great Lionel Hampton, drummer, character, vibes player again, of course, and all round, well, yes, larger than life sort of character with the speed on the drums and the vibes and that infectious sort of smile. Great band leader as well. Here he is with the band, and yes, if you're doing your post, this is just what you need. The Air Mail Special. And that's how you do it, as they say. The great Lionel Hampton tearing up the vibes there with, well, great company in that trio. Teddy Wilson at the piano, Gene Krupa behind the drums, playing some of the selections they played in the Benny Goodman movie. I remember that one, you'll do well. But yes, I thought vaguely ring a bell, the Benny Goodman movie. I must have seen it at some stage, I feel fairly certain. But it does swing along, doesn't it? Fantastic sound. And I'll have to dig it out again. The Benny Goodman movie, it's bound to be on YouTube or one of these services, isn't it? Maybe I should go back and take a look. If that's whetted your appetite for more, the Benny Goodman movie, see if you can find it online. You might find, I don't know, DVD. You never know, do you? It might be knocking around. Not the sort of thing I think that crops up on satellite or on standard channels these days, really, is it? That sort of, or those sort of movies. Speaking of which, things like the Marx Brothers. You know, when I was a kid growing up, the Marx Brothers often used to be on TV. The Laurel and Hardy movies, Sons of the Desert and such like. And the great Will Hay. They never seem to appear now. I bought a box set of Will Hay, and typically it's missing one of my favourites, Where's That Fire, I think. But you just don't see them. They don't seem to be shown anymore, whether they are all available on some online platforms. I expect so. Too many things to look at, not enough time to do it. That's the problem, isn't it? And you don't really want to spend all your day staring at a screen, do you? Okay, next up, here's one. It can be another little sort of quiz. I'd started one with Bing Crosby, but I was using a cassette. And typically, the second I started it, they decided to rip out the entire studio, put in an all singing, all dancing, all flashy, lots of lights, looks like you're sort of driving the space shuttle type new studio, which isn't connected to the cassette deck. I'll leave it there. We're working on it. So, yeah, I had to abandon that one for the time being. I'm sure the music is somewhere else, but just happened to be handy and it sounded perfectly all right. But there we go. That's technology for you. The Great British Experience. This is one I found rummaging around in the archives. 50 original light music classics, specially created, we're told, to offer some of the finest light music recorded in Britain during the past 50 years or so. You can add another 20 onto that. Well, no, 50 years, we'll call it that. We're talking about the 20th century anyway. Original versions conducted by the composers. And some of them very well known, of course, as themes or linked with certain things. Like this one. I don't think this will challenge you too far to either say A, what it's called, or B, what it was the theme tune for. You won't need your thinking cap on too long. Well, I dare say you all recognised The Devil's Gallop, of course. And if you recognise The Devil's Gallop, it's a fair bet, I would say, that you recognised it as the theme tune to, of course, Dick Barton. Well, what else? The piece itself, composed by Charles Williams, a leading figure in light music at the time, prolific composer. He conducted over 3 decades, great performances of his finest works, and was acclaimed worldwide for his Dream of Alwyn and the theme for the film The Apartment. And the first of several of his recordings in this collection, actually, of The Devil's Gallop, which captivated, of course, Dick Barton fans back in the 1940s. And you still hear it occasionally from time to time, don't you? Morris actually features it, if you ever listen to A Little Light Music on a Thursday evening here on Manx Radio. Check in with Morris, and I know he's played The Devil's Gallop before now on his show. Bit of crossover there between Sweet and Swing, and there is a bit from time to time, which is rather nice, isn't it? Quite like that. But yeah, check out Morris. So many good programmes with the specialist music, of course. Mondays, if you don't know, is all about brass. Time for Brass with Ian Cottier, all at 9 o'clock. So you don't have to worry about setting your timer or anything else. And all podcast, by the way. So Mondays, 9 o'clock is Ian Cottier, Time for Brass. Tuesdays, John Barker brings you the folk show with a great selection of folk show from here on the island and right the way around the globe. And a fantastic selection of different types of folk, modern folk, older folk, electronic-y folk, folk rock. I mean, he covers all bases. Really great selection there. Almost crosses over into Jumping In territory at times. Bit of crossover there as well. Wednesday is actually interesting because it rotates between Ernie Thorne, and Ernie rotates between bringing you the Opera Hour and Ernie's Eclectic, his great selection of eclectic music, his own eclectic tastes outside of his love of opera. And currently running is Country Roads, which I dare say you can tell is going to be great country music from around the globe with our own Andy Wint. And then Thursday, of course, as I say, is Morris with A Little Light Music, great light music classics and some brilliant classical music from all sorts of, different, whether it's later music, sort of 90s, certainly does 20th century music, he does 19th century music, he does 18th century music. Don't think he goes much beyond that, could be wrong. But not much in the 17th century, I don't think. Great stuff, though, anyway, and all very accessible. And Fridays, of course, here we are, Sweet and Swing, alternating, as I say, with Jumping In. All podcast. So if you can't make it, go online, go to your favourite podcast provider. You can download the podcast of any of the shows, listen where and when you want. Music like this.
There isn't any why he treats me so poorly. What have I gone and done? Makes my trouble double with his worry when surely I ain't deserving of none. Moaning low, my sweet man is gonna go, but if he goes, lordy me, he's the kind of man for the kind of a woman like me.
From 1931, Spike Hughes, Moanin' Low. Betty Bolton taking the vocals there. Almost sounds American in places, I think, in that part. Born in 1906, she made her first appearance as a child during the First World War and then involved with very early experimental television transmissions with the great John Logie Baird. And, if your memory is sufficiently long, she went on to carry on working on the new technology of television, making quite a few appearances on Children's Hour as an assistant to Derek McCulloch. Who was Derek McCulloch? Altogether now, Uncle Mac. Does ring a bell. Before my time, but I've heard of Uncle Mac. And then during the 20s and 30s made several dance band recordings with Van Phillips, Roy Fox, Sid Phillips, Alan Ray Starita, George Scott Wood, Spike Hughes, as we heard there, and Jay Wilbur, and a great picture of her in the Book of Words, playing what looks remarkably like a ukulele. Fantastic legs, it has to be said. You're not allowed to say that anymore, are you? But I'm going to say it anyway, because it's a great picture, a really great posed picture. I assume for a publicity shot. But it's, it could easily transfer to a modern one. She's got a sort of headdress on and a sort of shawl, I guess, around her shoulders, and is looking upwards and playing the ukulele. Not the banjolele that Mr. Formby played, but a proper ukulele. Now, I found this one, and I've just unwrapped it while we were listening to Betty Bolton. Jimmy Rushing. Lord knows when this came through. Suffice to say, it's been sat still in its cellophane. Had the world's work getting it out and almost glued to the cover. From our friends at Avid, 4 classic albums from Jimmy Rushing. Not often we feature Jimmy Rushing on Sweet and Swing. So, we'll put that right now, shall we? Why not? Here he is. If you hadn't heard Jimmy Rushing before, you might be in for a treat.
I left my baby standing in the back door crying. Yes, I left my baby standing in the back door crying. She said, baby, you've got a home long as I've got mine. She's gone and left me standing all alone. Yeah, she's gone and left me standing all alone. Promised me that we'd get married on the day that she left home. back door crying. Yes, I left my baby standing in the back door crying. She said, baby, you've got a home long as I've got mine. She's gone and left me standing all alone. She's gone and left me standing all alone. She said, baby, you've got a home long as I've got mine.
Steeped in the blues there, drenched in the blues, that sound and that voice. Jimmy Rushing from the album The Sound of Jazz. I Left My Baby, recorded in New York, 1957. Positively modern for us, it has to be said. Great lineup though. Roy Eldridge, Joe Newman, Doc Cheatham, Emmett Berry, I should say, on trumpet, Vic Dickinson, Dickie Wells and Frank Rehak on trombone, Lester Young and Coleman Hawkins. Not a bad lineup on tenor, is it? Earl Warren on alto, Harry Carney, great Harry Carney on bass. Who was on piano? Count Basie. Yeah, you get the gist of it, don't you? Freddie Green guitar, Eddie Jones bass, Joe Jones on the drums. What a lineup. And yeah, at the front there with the mic, soaking it in the blue. Jimmy Rushing. Yeah, we'll keep that one in the bag, shall we? Quite like that. It's, yeah, real great sort of sound. He also sang, which on this collection as well from my friends at Avid there, with the Dave Brubeck Quartet, the classic Dave Brubeck Quartet, with Joe Morello and Eugene Wright, and of course Dave himself at the piano. Yeah, who else? I was looking at the picture, which has got a picture of of Dave leaning over the piano and Jimmy Rushing playing, which slightly threw me for a second, but it is Dave playing the piano. Great. Yeah, I'll keep that one in the bag for the time being. Why not? At the last of our little series of great jazz trumpeters. We've been dipping in and out this for a while, and here's going to be our last. And yeah, there's so many goodies. But how about Buck in the Blues with Buck Clayton? Buck Clayton, the last of our great jazz trumpeters, or trumpeters of jazz, with the All-American Esquire Award winners. Back in 1946, Buck himself, Charlie Shavers, also on trumpet, J.J. Johnson on the trombone, Coleman Hawkins on tenor, Harry Carney again, Teddy Wilson, Harry Carney on the baritone, of course, Teddy Wilson piano, John Collins guitar, Chubby Jackson, great name that, bass, and the wonderful Shadow Wilson on the drums. Went on to play with Thelonious Monk, Shadow Wilson as well. Great names. Shadow, always quite fancy. Shadow Kane, that would have been all right, wouldn't it? Shadow Wilson. Lovely. You get some great names in jazz. And of course, Buck Clayton, well, he played with the man we've just heard on piano earlier on with Jimmy Rushing. He played with Count Basie's band for a good while, but didn't actually record on Victor, I don't think, with Count Basie. Wonderful sound. Like I said, yes, we'll leave our great jazz trumpets. I think we've been through most of those, and we'll start our new little mini series, I think, perhaps, of British quirky themes and British music and classic things. We'll go for a bit of that, yeah. Don't think Morris will mind. Hope not, in any case. Do not forget, if you're listening via the wonders of the podcast, wherever, and I notice quite popular in Britain, but also other parts of the world, as in the States and India, apparently, then would love to hear from you. Drop us a line. Howard Kane at manxradio.com. That's Kane with an E, is the easiest way to say where you're listening from and what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear. Or, of course, pen to paper or postcard. Howard Kane, Sweet and Swing, Manx Radio Broadcasting House, Douglas Head, Douglas in the Isle of Man. And the postcode there, IM15BW. I know some people do. It still exists, apparently. The old snail mail, the post. I know it seems to be a dying art, but some people like to keep it alive. I'm pleased to say. Either, though, would suffice. In the meantime, though, that is about it for another week here on Sweet and Swing. I should say another 2 weeks. It is, of course, jumping in, as I say, next week. But do drop us a line. Lovely to hear from anyone. We haven't had much correspondence of late, which is, a bit disappointing. So, yeah, go on. Go ahead and do it. Be brave. Get a mention of nothing else. Or perhaps something I can play for you. Look after yourselves, whatever you're doing. Stay warm. It's going to that time of year, isn't it? And I'll see you then. Cheerio.